Good morning, one and all, to Wisdom Wednesday, emanating from Spanish Fork, Utah. It is July the 15th in the pandemic era. Om Ganati Mananda Sangana Gana Salaka Chaksuran Meritam Yana Tajmai Sri Gurve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Sayamurupakara Mayam Tarati Swaparantikam Vandeham Siguru Siyata Parakamanam Shigarun Vaishnavam Sya Sirupam Sagaduram Sahagara Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Ladita Shivishakan Vitam Sya Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasaya Bhutare Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamani Namaste Sarasati Deva Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sanyabadi Paskata De Satarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hari 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 Ram Ram Hari Hari Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chevanaruttamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayo Dhirat Nashtaprayasho Bhadresu Nityam Bhagata Sevya Bhagavate Tamayaram Mohora Hora Sika Bhavi Bhavakaham. Okay, we're having a little few connection problems here. Let me make sure that we are on the good. Hold on one second. All right, the connection's good. We're on a good, strong Comcast connection. So if there's internet connection or buffering problems, there's nothing I can do about it because we've got the best possible setup here that we could possibly have. In many ways, we're still beta phase here, even though we've been broadcasting for weeks and weeks. We're still trying out new things. Thanks to a tip that Thomas sent me this morning, I've learned to landscape while on the phone. Before it would go sideways, no matter what I did, but for some reason it seems to have adjusted itself. So we're trying the landscape. I also like the portrait because it's more up close and personal. I do notice that most people go with a landscape. That seems to be the more professional choice. But I'm personally very fond of the portrait as well. So moving forward, we can't exactly tell you what our show is going to continue to look like. That'll give you even more reason to tune in because there's always going to be surprises. We tried various microphones also with disastrous effects yesterday with all the crackling and popping. And the fact is that throughout all of our various experiments and all, the phone, the iPhone itself has yielded the best sound. So we're going back to that today. And again, as I said, we're doing the landscaping. Another reason I like the phone is because I get to see all your little emojis, your little hearts and things there. For some reason on the desktop, those weren't revealing themselves. And the more we interact, the more Facebook shares this with more people, the more opportunities there are for people that know nothing about devotional service and nothing about bhakti to intersect. Yeah, there we go. In a recent article, Back to Godhead, written by a fellow named Chris Booth, he talked about how he got out of the army in the 70s or 80s, I think, and he was in San Diego standing in front of a bar, and he saw the Hare Krishnas for the first time going down the street chanting, and his first thought was, oh my gosh, I hope they don't approach me. So he put out a very forbidding kind of don't tread on me look, and crossed his arms in a defensive way, and sure enough, the devotees took one look at him and gave him a wide berth. And he was from Iowa, so he went back and lived to Iowa, and there was no cross-pollination, only a Christian community there. But he came across a book by Drew Karma called Forbidden Archaeology, and became fascinated, eventually moved to Los Angeles, and Drew Karma invited him to attend the evening program on a Tuesday night at the Los Angeles Temple to listen to the class. So he arrived very eager and excited, gone to a Hare Krishna temple to hear the class, and was very disappointed to hear that they don't have class on Tuesday nights. They just have the kirtan and the chanting. He was almost going to turn around and go back to his apartment, but he thought he'd give it a chance. He went into the apartment. There's a very the temple, and there's a very accommodating devotee that sits in the back with a book table, and he always has an extra chair beside him. So this devotee invited Christopher to sit down in the chair and listen to the kirtan, and he was so glad that he stayed because tears were streaming down his eyes while looking at the deity in the sacred atmosphere of the temple, hearing the beautiful kirtan. And part of those tears are derived from the fact that he basically 20 years had gone by. And he just, at that point, he had so many regrets that he was off-putting Shree Krishnas that he saw. And so when we go on live Facebook, consider this a partnership between you and me. If there's something you enjoy or something you like, go ahead and push a button, send an emoji out, make a comment. All of that interactivity increases the chances that someone like Chris Booth, some innocent, uninformed person, is going to come across our broadcast and become aware of Krishna consciousness as soon as possible. We don't want any unnecessary delays, especially none extending 20 years, as was the case in Christopher Booth's life story. All right, after all that lengthy introductions, let's now talk about the 27th verse. And thanks very much. I love seeing the little bubbles go up. 27th verse, second chapter, first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Wisdom Wednesday. It's the last of this week's three-part series. We'll be back next Monday with more from the beautiful story of the Absolute Truth. So today's verse, Rajastama Prakritaya Shamashila Vajanti Vai Pitri Bhuta Prajay Shadim Shri Ashwarya Prajapsavaham. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities, for they are urged by a desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, power, and progeny. Let me just say good morning to Anta Kayla, to Terry, Thomas. Hope your mom is recovering nicely from her surgery. Guru Charan, Radhe Sham, Rupa Manjari, sorry for my finger, Govinda, Dave, Sundari Priya, Bill. So nice to have you all regularly join us here on these mornings. Prabhupada's report reads in the following way. There is no need to worship demigods of whatsoever category if one is serious about going back to Godhead. And there's the rub, right? How many people are even aware of the alternative spiritual world, what to speak of setting their sights there? In the Bhagavad Gita 7:20 and 23, it's clearly stated that those who are mad after material enjoyment approach the different demigods for temporary benefits, which are meant for men with a poor fund of knowledge. We should never desire to increase the depth of material enjoyment. Material enjoyment should be accepted only up to the point of the bare necessities of life and not more or less than that. To accept more material enjoyment means to bind oneself more and more to the miseries of material existence. More wealth, more women, and false aristocracy are some of the demands of the materially disposed man because he has no information of the benefit derived from Vishnu worship. By Vishnu worship, one can derive benefit in this life as well as in life after death. Forgetting these principles, foolish people who are after more wealth, more wives, and more children worship various demigods. The aim of life is to end the miseries of life and not to increase them. And that, in fact, is the title of our talk today. Would everyone out there agree with me that it's better to decrease the miseries of life than to increase them? If you raise your hand, then we're going to tell you how you can decrease the miseries of life and not increase them. First step is in the 20th verse of the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Boy, fireworks are going off there now. Krishna says to Arjuna, and everything that Krishna says to Arjuna is meant for his good. He may tell him to give up a few things, but if he's trying to get you from something, it's only because he wants to open a better door, get you to a higher level. So Krishna is never a party spoiler. In fact, he's always looking to promote you to a higher level of joy, a higher level of bliss, a higher level of wisdom, a higher level of spiritual prosperity. And therefore he says to Arjuna, Kamastastir Ritganaham. Ritganaham means a heart which is lacking in knowledge and in fact is polluted rather than being colored and illuminated by knowledge. The hearts of those who worship the demigods are basically conditioned by kama, lusty desires, as Prabhupada says, wives, women, wealth, temporary prosperity in this world. Prapadyate nea devata, those who have limited vision and a poor fund of knowledge, whose only ambition extends to the material, to the temporary. They surrender themselves. They approach various demigods and they surrender themselves to those demigods in order to do business with them, basically. I will worship you. I will set aside a certain amount of expenditure and energy and time. I will hire the priests. We'll have the puja, and then we'll make our requests to you. So I give, you give, tit for tat, basically. And this is a polluted mentality permeated with lusty desires for temporary material benefits. Tam tam niyama mashana. Niyama means rules and regulations. Now, anytime you follow rules and regulations, that's a good thing. In our community in Utah, I've noticed that on many occasions when a young boy reaches the age of 16 years old, the parents arrange for a priest to come in for an elaborate, sometimes all-day sacrifice so that boy will get his sacred thread. Now, on that day, or perhaps even, in some extreme cases, for 2 or 3 days leading up to the ceremony, the parents will tell the boy not to eat meat. And then maybe even 3 days after the ceremony, he'll not eat meat. But then he'll go back to eating meat. So my question is, what's the use of the expenditure, and one family also who, to be honest with you, is very active in our movement. I was kind of shocked when I went to the sacred thread giving ceremony. They served meat to all the guests too after the ceremony was over. And I don't get it, because why go to all that time and trouble and expenditure in order to just make a show for some temporary material benefit for the purposes of impressing your friends and neighbors, when you could engage all that effort and that energy in terms of pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it doesn't really do any good to just give up meat for the 2 or 3 days before the ceremony and after, and then resume. That's like kvachit kevala, it's kvachit nirvatevada, kvachit charada, priyasitamato manye kunjara sochara. Says it's compared to the elephant. The elephant goes into the water and very carefully, scrupulously, diligently showers himself, pulls up out of the water gallons and gallons with his trunk, and then sprays and scrubs every crack and nook and cranny. And after he's squeaky clean, he's shining, he's glowing, he's glistening there in the water, what is the first thing he does? He gets out of the water and then he rolls in the dust. He gets all dirty again. So this type of so-called atonement is like the bathing of the elephant. It doesn't do any real good. If you're going to worship, why not worship Krishna? No great expenditure, it doesn't require an elaborate arrangement. You do have to be pure in heart. You do have to set your sights on decreasing the miseries of life rather than increasing them. And that's the difference between someone who's on the upward path and someone who's stuck in the miseries of this material world. The more that you engage in sense gratification, in the hypocritical showmanship for family and friends and country, the more that your involvement, your entanglement, your entrapment in the miseries of material life, birth, death, disease, and old age thickens. It's thickening. So it says, those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Now, it's popularly thought amongst members of the Hindu community, Indian community, that for certain purposes, it's better to worship the demigods than it is to worship the Supreme Lord. Yesterday, we talked about how Krishna says, even if you have material desires, still worship the Lord. The Lord will not only fulfill your temporal desires, take care of you here and now, will also arrange for you to graduate, to mature, to go past those desires, and make yourself eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. But in spite of those assurances by the Lord, still people bypass the Lord, they sidestep the Lord. And for instance, if they want health, instead of worshiping the Lord for health, who's willing to give it to them, both material and spiritual, physical and spiritual, they'll worship the sun god. They believe it's better to worship the sun god for health than to go to the Supreme Lord and worship him directly. Now the sun god, once he receives the worship, he's going to say, Krishna, is it okay if I give this person good health? But it never occurs to people to go directly to the source. But they'll go to the demigod, the part, rather than the whole. They'll worship Lakshmi, as Lakshmi is generally pictured standing, and from her hands come gold coins. There's a lot of opulence, beautiful sari, elephants tending her. So people, rather than worship Krishna directly for wealth, they'll worship Lakshmi. They don't realize Chintamani Pakara Sadmashoka Parikshu Lakshmi Vritishu Surabhi Abhipalyantam, that the Lord is surrounded by millions and millions of Lakshmis in the spiritual world. What does that tell us? Tell us that if you worship Vishnu, wherever there's Vishnu, there's going to be not one, but hundreds, if not thousands of Lakshmis. So there's no need to worship Lakshmi separately, just worship Vishnu. But they popularly believe that you should worship Lakshmi for wealth. Now, Indra, there is the famous story that the inhabitants of Vrindavan were preparing their annual sacrifice to Indra, the Lord of Rain. They lived in an agricultural village. Rainfall is essential for good crops, and it was a custom, a tradition, to do an elaborate sacrifice for Indra, the Lord of Rain, every year. But when Krishna was on the planet, in the manifestation pastimes, when he was exhibiting the body of a child, he talked to his father Nanda Maharaj and said, we have a more intimate relationship with Govardhan Hill, the cows, and the Brahmins. So let's do the puja for them. And Nanda Maharaj at first suggested, well, let's do the Indra puja because it's traditional, it's customary, we're in the habit of it, and then we'll do a separate puja for Govardhan Hill and the cows and the Brahmins. And at this point, Krishna got a little angry, and what he's basically saying is, I am God, there's no need to worship the demigods. He very clearly lays it out for Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Those whose hearts are distorted by material desires surrender to the demigods, follow the rules and regulations. So Krishna was not happy that a very, very elaborate and expensive puja was being arranged annually for Indra, when in fact, all the benefits that Indra could give, plus the benefit of decreasing material miseries and increasing one's chance of going back to Godhead, are attained when one worships the source, the boss, the Param Ishvara. So Krishna was guiding the simple inhabitants of Vrindavan in the right direction by diverting the worship from Indra to those who are dear to Krishna, Govardhan Hill, and the cows. And as we know this story, it didn't really matter that Indra got upset and rained clouds of destruction and tried to drown all the inhabitants and destroy everyone. It really didn't matter, because as soon as Indra started his tricks up with pouring rain and chilling temperatures, Krishna lifted the nearby Govardhan Hill with a little finger of his left hand and held it for 7 days and nights, just as easily, it says, as a child lifts up a mushroom. While all the inhabitants and cows gathered underneath it, they were warm, they were dry, they played games, they had fun. It was like a transcendental party. Indra was doing his worst that he could possibly do to them, but far from discomforting them, far from killing them, far from separating from Krishna. It only had the result of binding them closer in love and devotion to Krishna, which is what is most pleasing to the Lord in any case. So Krishna was telling you, don't need to worship Indra for good crops, you just worship me. But nevertheless, people will think popularly and erroneously that it's better to worship certain demigods than to worship Krishna. Another example is Parvati. People generally worship the wife of Lord Shiva, who's also known as Uma. She's Gauri sometimes, beautiful complexion, absolutely stunningly beautiful, and it's popularly believed that if you worship the wife of Lord Shiva, Parvati, you'll get a good wife. And for the women, it's believed that if you worship Durga, you'll get a good husband. So it's all mistaken to think that these individual types of demigod worship are going to be more effective than directly worshiping Krishna. Yepi anya devada bhakta yajanti sar tepi mami but yajanti abidi porvakam. Krishna says, whatever other demigod or wherever you may take your worship, he says, it is really meant for me alone. It ultimately depends upon the sanction of Krishna whether any individual demigod can grant your desires or give you the fruits of that particular puja. Now, when the greatest devotees of Krishna were on the planet, the cowherd milkmaids of Vrindavan. They also worship Durga for a good husband, but there's a difference. They wanted Krishna as their husband, so they worshiped the demigod in order to have Krishna as their husband, and that's okay. That because the demigods are also devotees, and so if you rather than see them as separate order suppliers from Krishna, and basically offensively worship them in lieu of Krishna, if one worships the demigods for Krishna, they can also help you in your devotional journey, because they themselves are advanced than we are. When the gopis went to the temple of Durga, or when Rukmini went to the temple of Durga, they are actually worshiping the demigod in order to get Krishna as their husband. So as long as Krishna is in the mix there somewhere, you are going to have the result of decreasing material miseries. And if you do anything leaving Krishna out of the mix, because Krishna's in everyone's heart, he's in every atom. So it is the deepest, grossest illusion to try to do anything outside of Krishna. You can be outside of Krishna consciousness, but that's your problem. The fact is that Krishna is everywhere. He's all pervasive, inconceivably one with and different from his creation. And so those who are wise, those who are in knowledge, and those who are blessed, they always include Krishna in the equation. And so powerful is that inclusiveness that, there are many stories of demons like Hiranyakashipu and Kamsa. Kamsa was always thinking of Krishna. He was not thinking of Krishna favorably. He was not thinking of Krishna in love. For Kamsa, Krishna was cruel death, and Kamsa was losing sleep and having nightmares and visions and hallucinations, wondering when Krishna was going to come to kill him. But nevertheless, even though he didn't worship Krishna in a favorable mood, he got a great boon that he didn't deserve. So the moral of the story is, whenever you intersect Krishna, he is all good, he is all pure, he is all perfect. He's going to give you the best result that he can possibly give you. Just like the expert physician. Generally, people who get sick, they want to go on eating the foods and pursuing the habits that got them sick in the first place. So a physician who's more concerned about and popularity and being liked will compromise and not lay down the law that patient has to stop eating those foods and practicing those unhealthy habits. A physician who wants popularity, he wants money, he wants plenty of patients, he won't be strict with his patients. He won't dictate to them that you have to stop this and this and this and this in order to enjoy radiant, full health. But Krishna loves us. He created us. He's our Father. Aham bija pridhabhita. He always wants the best for us. So sometimes he's going to lay down the law. And over and over and over and over again, he's saying, it's not as effective to approach my separated parts and parcels as it is to approach me. And of course, of the different types of people who approach Krishna, the best ones are those who approach Krishna to go back to home, back to Godhead, to get off this wheel of birth, death, disease, and old age. But if you're not at that level of knowledge, nevertheless, Krishna still wants you to approach him. He wants you to become his patient. He wants you to put yourself in his care, and he will fulfill your material desires, and he will also fulfill your spiritual desires. So who can, in their right mind, not take up the Lord in his offer? Whether you're pure, whether you're impure, whether you're exalted, whether you're low, whether you're a liberated soul, whether you're a conditioned soul, Krishna is just saying, God himself, the Lord of universes, is basically canvassing, offering to fulfill all of your desires and take you back home, back to God on top of everything else. So it's not a fact that worshiping the separate demigods is going to be more effective than worshiping Krishna. In fact, just the opposite. Those who are in knowledge know that the Supreme Lord Krishna is the master of all. Ekala Ishvara Krishna Ara Sabya Brita. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, 5th chapter, 142nd verse. It said, Ekala Ishva, there's one supreme controller, and his name is Krishna, and everybody else, even Parvati, even Indra, even Shiva, even Brahma, even Kali, even Durga, they are his servants. And if you worship Krishna, you're not the loser, but you're the gainer millions of times over. Again, in Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 3rd chapter, 10th verse, we'll be advancing to this within another couple of weeks. The famous verse that Prabhupada so often quoted, Akama, Sarvakama, Mokshakama, Udaradi, Tivrena, Bhakti Yojana, Yajitam Purushaparam. Whether you're Akama, you have no material desires, or Sakama, you're full of material desires, or Moksha Karma, whether you're desirous of liberation, you're a salvationist, everybody should worship Krishna. Why? Because Tivrena Bhakti Yuganam, the light, the sunbeam of devotional service is so powerful that if your heart is already clear of material desires, if you're akama, it will even further illuminate and satisfy and brighten the inner chambers of your heart. If your heart is convoluted with a desire to merge and become one with the Lord, like the Maya bodies of the impersonalists, the powerful sunlight of bhakti will illuminate you with transcendental knowledge. You begin to see in the illuminated chambers of your heart how, although you're spirit and God is spirit, you're not God. God is not to be brought down to your level. That you're spirit, God's spirit, but he's a supreme spirit. So the proper understanding here on Wisdom Wednesday is that we are subordinate spirits and God is the supreme spirit. We are the part spirits and God is the whole spirit. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhakaranai. Constitutionally, eternally, we're built in such a way as to always be servants, now, in the future, in the past, servants of the Supreme Lord. And by the process of executing devotional service, even if you have material desires, you'll become purified. That powerful sunbeam of Krishna consciousness will take away the devouring, hellish desire with the Lord and reestablish you in the dualism, a reciprocal, individual, loving relationship between you and the Lord. And then finally, Savakama, doesn't matter how many material desires you have in your heart, doesn't matter how much baggage you bring to the table, Krishna will purify you. I mentioned yesterday the classic case of this Dhruva Maharaj. He wanted a kingdom greater than that of his grandfather. He worshiped the Lord in order to get material opulence. But when the Lord appeared before him, he was so enamored getting the darshan of the Lord that he became ashamed. He said, Lord, is there any way I can take this desire for material opulence off the table and just be engaged in your devotional service? And the Lord said, no, that's what you wanted. And so I'm giving it to you. I'm giving you a kingdom. I'm fulfilling your desire to have a kingdom greater than your grandfather. But I grant you the boon that you'll always be able to think of me. And when your reign on the pole star, Dhruva is finished, I guarantee you that you'll come back to home, back to Godhead. So Dhruva enjoys the fruits of his penances and austerities by ruling for 60,000 years in the North Star that we see in the sky at the night. But his sovereignty in this planet, in this kingdom, has got to be somewhat dampened. He's got to feel himself somewhat sober, considering that he could have already been back to home, back to Godhead, had he not interposed this material desire between himself and the Lord. But it works out fine, because he got what he wanted, and he got more than he could have ever imagined. Now, the best example of akarma, those living entities who have no material desires, are, again, the gopis, the transcendental milkmaids of Vrindavan. They had no desire for happiness apart from Krishna. Their happiness was Krishna's happiness. When they saw that as a result of something they did, that Krishna was happy, then they were happy. If they were to have seen that as a result of something they said or did, or a certain glance or look, that Krishna appeared to be slightly distressed, then they would be distressed. If there's something that made them happy, but it didn't make Krishna happy, then their happiness became unhappiness. If there's something that made them unhappy, but some or other made Krishna happy, then their unhappiness became their greatest happiness. In other words, akama doesn't mean without desires, without passions, without sentiments, without emotion. Akama, to be free of material desires for one's own sense gratification, is automatically achieved when one is Krishna consciousness. In other words, the akama mentality is Krishna, 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 Krishna. Krishna in the morning, Krishna in the afternoon, Krishna in the evening, dream of Krishna when I go to bed at night, Krishna in the past, Krishna in the present, Krishna in the future. Now, if we recall the Bhagavad Gita, in the beginning, setting the scene, first chapter, Arjuna says to Krishna, he asks Krishna to drive the chariot in between the armies so that Arjuna can see with whom it is that he wants to fight. And then it says, Evam Ukva Rishikesha, go to Kesha, Najochayati Govinda, Ukpatushnim Bahuvaham. So looking at those who oppose him on the battlefield, Bhisma, Dronacharya, Ashwatthama, Karna, Duryodhana, Arjuna decides not to fight. He says, I don't want to fight my relatives. If I should kill them, their wives would become widows, their children become orphans. I would be the cause of unwanted, unloved progeny, and the whole world would go to hell in a handbasket. So Arjuna is speaking from the point of view of kama, self-interest. What would happen to me and my family and my future if I went ahead and fight? So he declined to fight, being influenced by the akama spirit because he wanted to save his relatives for his own satisfaction. Nahi prapasami mamapadin yakshchokamuchasmin. I can find no way to drive away this grief which has dried up my senses. How would I enjoy an earthly kingdom in the absence of my relatives? Now, any opulence that one gets, the enjoyment of it, just earth, air, fire, and water in different combinations, whatever it might be, house, palace, grounds, transportation, throne, whatever it may be, it's just earth, air, fire, and water. It has no inherent ability to give you pleasure. The pleasure comes from enjoying it with your friends and relatives. And so Arjuna says, how will I enjoy the kingdom if, in order to get it, I have to kill all those with whom I would like to enjoy it? And so the spoils, he said, will be tainted with the blood of my relatives. This is all calculating from his own self-centered point of view. But being a pure devotee, he was willing to be open. He was willing to listen to what Krishna had to tell him. And then at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, he transferred from the kama spirit, I don't know if I've been saying akama or not, from the kama spirit to the akama spirit. When he accepted that Krishna wanted him to fight, that it made him unhappy, but it made Krishna happy. So he said, Krishna, even though it has the potential to make me unhappy, I can see it's going to make you happy. So therefore, I'm going to take your happiness as my happiness, and I'm going to take my unhappiness as inconsequential. Nashta mohas mitirlabda tvatprashadam stitashminga Kadisha said, after hearing you, Krishna, my illusion, my self-centered illusion of wanting to enjoy kingdom, wealth, wives, happiness in this world, after hearing you, now that's gone away. I simply want to please you, and in pleasing you, I'm going to decrease miseries and increase my chances of going back to home, back to God. And Prabhupada says, being a pure devotee, he agreed to fight on the instruction of the Lord because he came to his senses and realized how nicely Prabhupada expresses this here. He came to his senses and realized that satisfaction of the Lord at the cost of his own satisfaction was his prime duty. Thus he became akama. And we must note that it's in rare instances that our own personal satisfaction in the Lord comes into such confrontational conflict as it did on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Many times confluent. They're not mutually exclusive. They can be pursued concurrently. However, our priority always has to be, does this please the Lord? And if and when there comes a time when our social duties, our social priorities seem to conflict with the priorities of God, then we've got to do exactly what Arjuna did, is we've got to transfer over to the Akama spirit. Prabhupada continues his purport here. For material enjoyment, there's no need to approach the demigods, and I hope we've made that abundantly clear this afternoon. If you get the point, give me some emojis just right now, and let's push this up in the Facebook algorithms, increase the chances of uninitiated, uninformed people running across these broadcasts. If you will be so kind as to partner with me in spreading the gospel Bhagavad Gita. Yes, it's so nice. And that's one of the reasons I'm on the phone, because I can see you encouraging me, and I can see you pushing all of this higher in the Facebook exposure, which I couldn't see on my desktop. And again, as I mentioned, the sound quality has consistently been better on the phone than through the various mics we have. Wow, it's very, well, 4th of July out there now. Thank you. You guys are the best. All right. Here now with Prabhupada's purport. I'm going to miss you Thursday, Friday, Saturday, till we get back again on Motivational Monday. The demigods are but servants of the Lord. As such, they are duty-bound to supply necessities of life in the form of water, light, air, etc. One should work hard and worship the Supreme Lord by the fruits of one's labor for existence. And that should be the motto of life. One should be careful, execute occupational service with faith in God in the proper way, and that will lead one gradually on the progressive path back to home, back to God. At the risk of being repetitive, because we mentioned this yesterday and the day before, you may have a tree, and you may calculate that if I put water on the twigs and branches and flowers, that will be watering the tree. But it's not watering the tree, it's just watering parts of the tree. So similarly, demigods, they are parts of Krishna, and worshiping the demigods is not worshiping Krishna. It's not the same thing. They're not interchangeable. The only way you can properly water the tree is to put water in the root of the tree. Then the nourishment is distributed throughout the whole tree. It is improper to worship the parts of the tree in the form of leaves and branches. If you water them, it will not be effective. The tree itself will die. And so similarly, the only really proper worship, the proper mode of service, the proper use of our energy, the proper use of this valuable form of life is in watering the root of the tree, is in worshiping the Lord himself directly. Now, it appears in one verse in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that we're encouraged to worship the demigods. Ishtan Bhogani Bodhibha Dasantiga Terdatana Yobhaktastena Yabacha. It says that in the beginning, the Lord created the universe, and he gave us the things that we need for our maintenance, like sunlight, moonlight, electricity, air, earth, water, seeds. He gave us all these things for our maintenance, but we have to ensure their continuance by acknowledging the Lord's parts and parcels, his representatives, the demigods. In other words, we have to acknowledge the Lord's supremacy through the demigods who are in charge of the various necessities of life. And Krishna says, if one enjoys the things that we need to maintain ourselves without acknowledging the higher power, then one is a thief, and one becomes liable to scarcities, to shortages. Take an example. Right now I'm sitting, running a computer, there's light. It all is powered by electricity, which comes through power lines and originate in the power plant, and there's some hydroelectric arrangement or solar arrangement or coal powered or wood burning arrangement in the power plant to get this electricity to me. Now, if I just take it for granted, I go on using electricity day after day after day, and I don't pay the electric bill which comes every month, then the electricity is going to be cut off and I won't be able to do any of the things I'm doing. I won't be able to enjoy. My pleasure will be decreased and my misery will increase. So if you want to increase your pleasure and decrease your misery, then don't acknowledging and recognizing the various demigods who play their roles on behalf of the Supreme Lord to supply us with power and light. So in one sense, sacrifice to demigods as representative of the Lord is required. But then right after this verse, Krishna says, Yagnar tat kamana lokayam kamana tadartam kamayanti lokas tadanavardite. The highest sacrifice, and that one sacrifice, rather than sacrificing to the sun god, sacrificing to the rain god, sacrificing to the god of grains, doing all these different sacrifices and using time and energy, then having said that one must appease the demigods, Krishna gives us the best way to do it. And it's not by separately worshiping them all who are parts of the Lord. But Krishna says sacrifice to Vishnu must be performed, because by sacrificing for Vishnu, all the demigods are automatically in one fell swoop satisfied. Just like food. You don't put the food in your nose, you don't put it in your ears, you don't put it in your mouth. The proper way is to put it in your, you don't put it in your eyes. The proper way is to put it in your mouth. When it goes to the stomach, then all the parts of the body are nourished. So the worship of Vishnu is that which satisfies all other living beings in the universe. Not only the demigods, but your fellow human beings, the reptiles, the mammals, the aquatics. Every living being is nourished and satisfied by the process of worshiping Vishnu. And it is, no matter how many representatives, no matter how many administrative demigods there are, and we mentioned previously that in each and every universe there are 33 million demigods who administrate the various necessities of life for our well-being. Nevertheless, what it all boils down to is Nitya Nityanam Eko Yo Vidadati Kama. Nitya is singular, what? The singular, omnipotent, supreme living being whose name is Krishna, that one singular eternal Eko Yo Vidadati Kaman, supplies all the necessities of life for the many plural parts and parcels eternals. That means each and every one of us, even the demigods, is a part of, and not only that, dependent upon the one supreme Ishvara Parama, Krishna, for all of our necessities of life. And therefore, he should be the only object of our worship, the only beneficiary of our sacrifices. Bhoktaram Yagatapisham, last verse, 5th chapter. Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, Suridam Sarva Buddha, Gyatva Santim Richati. Krishna says, a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries by worshiping me. So there we are, QED, Om Tat Sat. Right there we have it in the words of our eternal spiritual master, that by recognizing in 3 ways, as the enjoyer, as the creator, and as our well-wishing friend, we attain peace. And when we attain peace, we reduce the miseries of material life and increase our chances of eternal life back in the kingdom of God. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If that sounds good to you, let's go out in a great explosion of fireworks here on Wisdom Wednesday to conclude our great 3 days of association and savoring the philosophy and the bhakti of love of Lord Krishna, to which there is no other equivalent process within the 3 worlds, and offer our respectful obeisances and gratitude to our eternal spiritual master, Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to whom he came to us while we were standing in the darkest region of ignorance, and with the shining torchlight of knowledge opened our eyes. So thanks very much. We have shows also on the weekend. You're welcome to join us for our motivational talk Saturday and Sunday, a Krishna Light show, etc., etc. But in any case, I hope you'll join us again next Monday morning at 7:30 Mountain Daylight Time for Motivational Monday. Meanwhile, keep safe, keep Krishna conscious, keep chatting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare.